The scorching twin suns of Kithar beat down on the blood-soaked sands of the grand arena. Silas felt sweat mingling with dried blood on his brow as he stood amidst the fallen bodies of his opponents. His breath came in ragged gasps, muscles screaming from exertion. 3 years of bondage, 99 trials, and now the 100th champion lay at his feet. The crowd's roar was deafening, a cacophony of Valoran elites celebrating another spectacle of violence. Silas's gaze moved across the circular arena to the Imperial viewing box where Arena Master Korath stood with arms raised, basking in the bloodshed he had orchestrated. Beside him sat Princess Tiessa, daughter of Emperor Vorak himself, her golden skin and violet eyes marking her pure Valoran lineage. Unlike the others, she wasn't cheering. "The human slave has prevailed," Korath's voice boomed through amplifiers. 100 trials completed. By ancient custom, he shall kneel before Princess Tiessa and claim his reward. Silas's jaw tightened. The reward was well known. Princess Tiessa would become his property, a trophy wife to the arena's champion. It was the Valoran way of ensuring genetic diversity in their ruling bloodlines, a tradition centuries old. The crowd fell silent, anticipating the ritual words of claiming. But Silas remained standing, his scarred chest heaving. Arena guards shifted nervously at his defiance. "I said kneel, human," Korath commanded, his voice edged with anger. Silas locked eyes with Tiessa. In that moment, something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, understanding. "I claim no reward." Silas's voice carried across the stunned arena. "I claim only my freedom." Gasps rippled through the audience. No champion had ever refused the prize. Korath's face contorted with rage. General Zeon, the Emperor's military commander, leaned forward in his seat, eyes narrowing with interest. "Hey, this is an outrage," Korath sputtered. "You insult our customs, our princess." "Your customs are not mine," Silas replied. "I am no one's master, just as I will be no one's slave again." Princess Tiessa stood slowly, her ornate robes shimmering in the harsh sunlight. For the first time, a smile touched her lips. "The human has completed the trials," she announced. "By law, he has earned whatever he wishes. If freedom is his desire, then freedom shall be granted." The crowd erupted in chaos. Nobles argued vehemently, some supporting tradition, others fascinated by this unprecedented turn. Korath's face had turned purple with fury, but he dared not contradict the princess openly. "Very well," he finally hissed. "The human Silas will be granted honored captivity in the outer district, for his own protection, of course." Silas recognized the threat beneath the words. Honored captivity was just another form of imprisonment, but before he could object, Princess Tiessa stepped forward. "I will personally ensure the champion's safe accommodation," she declared, "as is my right as the intended prize." Korath bowed stiffly, unable to refuse her. "As you wish, princess." As guards surrounded Silas to escort him from the arena, he caught a final glimpse of Tiessa. Her expression had changed, calculation replacing the earlier surprise. Whatever game had just begun, she was already several moves ahead. The outer district quarters assigned to Silas were lavish by human standards. A spacious apartment with large windows overlooking Cathara's glittering towers. But the security systems and guards posted outside made it clear this was still a prison. Gilded though it might be, Silas paced the room, testing boundaries. 3 years of survival had taught him to always plan for escape. The ventilation system looked promising, large enough for a human to navigate, unlike the Valoran physiology these buildings were designed for. A soft chime announced a visitor. Silas tensed, ready for confrontation. The door slid open to reveal Princess Tiessa, now dressed in simpler attire, though no less regal. "Champion," She acknowledged with a slight nod. I'm no one's champion, Silas replied. Just a man who's survived too long. And yet you've become something more today, she said, stepping inside and allowing the door to close behind her. You've become a symbol. I didn't ask to be a symbol. A few ever do. Tayessa moved to the window, gazing out at the city. What you did today, it was either very brave or very foolish. Perhaps both, Silas admitted. Why are you here? To ensure your father's property remains intact until he decides my fate. She turned, her violet eyes flashing. You're not property. That's precisely the point, isn't it? Your defiance challenged centuries of tradition, but it also resonated with something I've long felt but never dared express. Silas studied her carefully. Was this a trap? Some elaborate Valoran game to break his resolve? The outer districts are buzzing with talk of you, she continued. Humans and other subjugated species see hope in your stand. Already. General Zeon has advised my father to have you publicly executed as an example. And what do you advise, princess? She smiled, the expression transforming her severe features. I advised nothing. I simply invoked my right as the intended prize to determine your accommodations. Why would you help me? Perhaps I see something worth preserving, she replied cryptically. Or perhaps I have my own reasons to question the Empire's traditions? Before Silas could press further, alarms blared throughout the building. Tayessa's head snapped toward the door. Security breach, she said, suddenly alert. This isn't authorized. The lights flickered and died, emergency illumination casting red shadows across the room. Silas moved instinctively, pulling Tayessa away from the door just as it exploded inward. Smoke filled the room as armored figures rushed through. Assassins, Tayessa hissed, targeting you or perhaps both of us. Silas didn't waste time on questions. He'd prepared for this possibility, having spent hours examining the room's potential weapons and escape routes. He grabbed a decorative metal rod from the wall and swung it hard, connecting with the first attacker's helmet. The figure crumpled. The ventilation shaft, he instructed Tayessa, pointing to the ceiling panel he'd loosened earlier. Can you climb? She didn't answer with words but leapt with unexpected agility, pulling herself up and into the shaft. Silas fought defensively, keeping the attackers at bay until she was safely inside. Then he upended a table of heavy stone, creating a temporary barrier before following her into the shaft. They crawled through dusty darkness, Silas leading by memory of the building schematics he'd studied on the apartment's information terminal. Left here, he whispered. Service junction should be 2 meters ahead. How did you know they would come? Tayessa asked, her voice tight. I didn't, but survival means always having an exit strategy. They emerged in a maintenance corridor, dimly lit and deserted. Silas glanced at Tayessa, noting how she held herself ready, alert but not panicked. Not what he'd expected from Imperial royalty. Who would want us dead? He asked. The list is unfortunately long, she replied grimly. But this attack, it's too soon after your arena victory. Someone was prepared for this contingency. Silas nodded. Someone who benefits from both our deaths, or someone who benefits if I die saving the defiant human champion. She added thoughtfully. It would discredit me politically, paint me as a traitor to Valoran interests. They moved cautiously through service corridors until reaching a sealed doorway. Tayessa pressed her palm to the scanner, and it opened immediately. A royal override, she explained at Silas's questioning look. Some privileges are worth keeping. Beyond the door lay a private transport bay. Tayessa quickly activated a sleek vehicle. Where are we going? Silas asked. Somewhere even my father's security doesn't monitor, she replied. There's more happening here than a simple assassination attempt. The transport hummed to life, lifting them above Cathara's gleaming towers and speeding toward the mountains beyond the city limits. Silas watched the urban sprawl give way to wilderness, noting defensible positions and potential hazards by habit. You're always analyzing, Tayessa observed. Always planning. It's how I've stayed alive. Is that all you want, survival? Silas considered the question. For 3 years, yes. Now, I'm not sure. The transport descended into a narrow valley, approaching what appeared to be a sheer cliff face. At the last moment, a hidden hangar door slid open, admitting them into a cavernous space carved into the mountain itself. My private retreat, Tayessa explained as they disembarked. Officially for meditation and study, unofficially. She led him deeper into the facility, past advanced communication systems and what appeared to be weapons caches. You're planning something, Silas realized, something against the Empire. Not against the Empire, she corrected. For its soul. The Valoran were not always conquerors and slavers. Our ancient code spoke of honor and justice. Somewhere. We lost our way. She activated a holographic display showing Cathara's districts. Red indicators pulsed throughout the human sectors. Your arena victory has sparked something, she said. Small acts of defiance are breaking out everywhere. General Zeon is already using it as justification to crack down on human settlements. I never wanted an uprising, Silas said, feeling the weight of responsibility. I just wanted freedom. Sometimes one person's freedom becomes everyone's cause. Tayessa replied. The question now is, what will you do with the fire you've ignited? Before he could answer, a communication alert sounded. Tayessa activated the channel, and a holographic figure appeared, a human man with weathered features and determined eyes. Jonas, she greeted him. Report. Princess. The man nodded respectfully before turning to Silas. So this is the arena champion. The timing of your stand was perfect. Our networks were already in place. Networks? Silas questioned. The human resistance, Tayessa explained. I've been working with them for months. Silas stared at her in disbelief. You, the Emperor's daughter, are aiding a resistance against your own people. Against policies that dishonor my people, she corrected. There's a difference. Jonas continued his report. We've secured 3 district substations. The Imperial response has been confused. They still don't know whether to treat this as a full rebellion or isolated incidents. And the assassination team? Tayessa asked. Professional mercenaries, not Imperial forces, Jonas confirmed. We're still tracking who hired them. My money's on General Zeon, Tayessa said grimly. He's been looking for an excuse to remove me from the line of succession. Silas absorbed this information, pieces falling into place. So I'm just a pawn in your political game? No, Tayessa replied firmly. You're the catalyst no one expected. Your refusal to claim me, to claim ownership of another being. It resonated with something I've been trying to express for years. You're not a pawn, Silas. You might be the king piece we never knew we needed. Jonas cleared his throat. The people need to see him, the champion who defied the arena system. It's too dangerous, Tayessa objected. The assassination attempt was meant to silence him before he could become a true symbol. Jonas finished. Which means we must make him visible before they try again. Silas stepped forward. I'll do it, not as your champion or symbol, but because I made a choice in that arena. If others find hope in that choice, I won't hide from the consequences. Tayessa studied him, concern evident in her violet eyes. You understand the risk? Once you publicly align with the resistance, There's no protection I can offer, not even as a princess. I never asked for your protection, Silas replied, then softened his tone. But I am grateful for your alliance. The decision made, they spent hours planning. Jonas outlined the resistance network, far more extensive than Silas had imagined. Humans across the empire had been organizing for years, waiting for the right moment. Thaisa provided imperial security codes and patrol schedules. Silas contributed tactical insights from his years observing Valoran military procedures from inside the arena system. As dawn approached, Jonas departed to prepare for Silas's public appearance. Thaisa offered Silas guest quarters to rest, but he declined. I've slept with one eye open for 3 years, he explained. Old habits. Then perhaps company would help, she suggested. I have questions about Earth, about human customs. They talked through the remaining hours of darkness. Silas described the human colonies he'd known before capture, imperfect but free. Thaisa spoke of ancient Valoran philosophy, of the disconnect between those ideals and imperial reality. Somewhere in those honest exchanges, respect deepened into something more. Why did you really refuse to claim me? She asked finally. As golden light began to filter through the mountain retreat's hidden windows, Silas considered the question carefully. Because freedom can't be given, it must be chosen, and no one should own another person, not as a slave, not as a prize. And if I chose you, not as property or owner, but as equal? The question hung between them, charged with possibility. Silas found himself drawn to her courage, her conviction, her willingness to risk everything for what she believed right. I would choose you in return, he admitted. But not until we're both truly free to make that choice. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Then let's free ourselves and everyone else while we're at it. Jonas returned with civilian clothing for Silas, simple but dignified attire that would help him blend with the population while still appearing as a leader. The plan was straightforward. Silas would address a gathering in the central market of the human district, with resistance fighters providing security. What they hadn't anticipated was the size of the crowd. Thousands of humans had gathered, along with members of other subjugated species, Altarians with their crystalline skin, stocky Brexans, even some rogue Valorans who opposed imperial policies. The energy was electric, hopeful yet volatile. As Silas stepped onto the makeshift platform, a hush fell over the assembly. He had never been one for speeches, preferring action to words. But looking out at the sea of faces, people who had suffered as he had suffered, something ignited within him. I am Silas, he began simply. 3 days ago, I was a slave who fought for the entertainment of those who claimed ownership over us. Today, I stand before you, having rejected their reward system, their ownership, their control over my destiny. The crowd roared its approval. Silas raised his hands for quiet. But my freedom means nothing if you remain in chains. True liberty isn't a gift bestowed by masters, it's the natural right of every sentient being. From the corner of his eye, Silas spotted Imperial security forces beginning to surround the gathering. Thaisa, disguised in a hooded cloak, signaled a warning from the side of the platform. They tell us we should be grateful for the scraps from their table. Silas continued, speaking faster now. They dress up servitude in pretty words like tradition and order. But I have seen their order, built on our broken backs and spilled blood. The Imperial forces pushed forward, energy weapons ready. Jonas and his resistance fighters moved to intercept them, creating a protective barrier. We don't seek to destroy, Silas declared. We seek to transform, to build a society where no one kneels except by choice, where no one owns another's life or labor. The first shots were fired. stunning bolts that dropped resistance fighters where they stood. The crowd began to panic, but Silas stood firm. They fear us, not because we are violent, but because we are awakening. Because once people realize their chains are imaginary, no force in the galaxy can re-enslave them. Chaos erupted as Imperial troops charged the platform. Silas fought defensively, disarming rather than killing when possible. Tiessa revealed herself, using her royal authority to create momentary confusion among the troops. It wasn't enough. They were outnumbered and outgunned, as they retreated through the narrow streets of the human district, pursued by Imperial forces. Silas made a decision. He turned to Jonas. "Get Tiessa to safety, I'll draw them off." "Silas, no," Tiessa began to object. "This isn't sacrifice," he assured her. "It's strategy. Trust me." Before she could argue further, he pulled her close, their lips meeting in a brief, fierce kiss. Then he was gone, darting down a different alley, deliberately making noise to attract their pursuers. The Imperial forces followed, just as he'd planned. Silas led them on a chase through the district he knew well from his early days as a captured slave. When he'd drawn them far enough from Tiessa and Jonas, he allowed himself to be cornered in a marketplace. Surrounded by Imperial troops, Silas raised his hands slowly. "I invoke the right of combat," he announced formally. The troops hesitated, looking to their commander. The right of combat was ancient Valoran law, a means of settling disputes when legal standing was questioned. It hadn't been invoked in generations, but it remained valid. The commander, a hardened veteran named Thex, stepped forward. "You have no standing to invoke such rights. Slave." "I completed 100 trials," Silas countered. "By your own laws, I earned freedom and the right to determine my own fate. I choose to settle this matter through the right of combat." Murmurs spread through the troops. Legally, he was correct. The commander's face twisted with frustration. "Very well," Thex spat. "Combat it shall be. When you lose, all who followed you will face Imperial justice." "And when I win," Silas replied calmly, "they go free, and the human districts gain autonomy." The commander laughed. "Bold terms for a man about to die, I accept." Word of the challenge spread rapidly through Cathara. By Imperial law, the duel would take place aboard the military cruiser Retribution, with official witnesses from all major factions. It was a spectacle nearly as anticipated as the arena trials themselves. Tiessa found Silas in a holding cell aboard the Retribution, preparing mentally for combat. "Hey, this is madness," she hissed through the energy barrier. "Thex is undefeated in personal combat and he's killed dozens." "So have I," Silas reminded her. "The difference is I never wanted to. There must be another way." "There isn't," he cut her off gently. "The uprising needs legitimacy. Winning through recognized Valoran law gives us that legitimacy." She pressed her palm against the barrier, energy crackling around her fingers. "I can't lose you now. Not when we've barely begun." Silas matched her gesture, their hands separated by mere centimeters of humming energy. "You won't lose me. I didn't survive 100 arena trials to fall here." The dual chamber aboard the Retribution was austere and functional, a circular space with viewing platforms for witnesses. Commander Thex entered in full combat armor, carrying an energy blade and neural disruptor. Silas stepped into the circle wearing only the simple clothing he'd been captured in, unarmed. "You bring no weapons?" Thex mocked. "I bring only what I need," Silas replied. The ship's captain, a severe Valoran female named Kira, announced the terms: combat until submission or death. The winner's terms would be binding under Imperial law. "Begin," she ordered, stepping back from the circle. Thex charged immediately, energy blade humming with deadly purpose. Silas dodged, studying his opponent's movements. The commander was skilled but predictable, trained in orthodox Valoran combat techniques that Silas had faced countless times in the arena. "He stand and fight, human," Thex growled after several failed attacks. "Why?" Silas asked calmly, continuing to evade. "Because it would make your victory easier? Because it fits your understanding of how combat should proceed?" The commander snarled and unleashed his neural disruptor, a pulse weapon designed to temporarily paralyze. Silas had anticipated this, dropping and rolling beneath the blast. He came up inside Thex's guard, striking precise blows to nerve clusters in the Valoran anatomy. Thex staggered back, shocked by the human's knowledge of Valoran physiological weaknesses. "Where did you learn?" "I learned to survive," Silas replied, pressing his advantage. "I learned by watching my opponents die, by memorizing every vulnerability the arena exposed." The fight continued, Thex growing increasingly frustrated as Silas avoided direct confrontation while landing debilitating strikes. The human fought not with brute force but with precision and psychological warfare. "You rely on your weapons, your armor," Silas observed, circling. "They make you predictable." In a burst of rage, Thex charged again. This time, Silas didn't dodge. He stepped into the attack, accepting a glancing blow from the energy blade across his shoulder to gain position. Then he struck, a precise hit to the commander's helmet that shattered the neural interface controlling his armor's enhanced functions. The commander froze, his armor locking up as its systems failed. Silas calmly removed the energy blade from Thex's rigid fingers. "Do you yield?" he asked quietly. Trapped within his own armor, Thex had no choice. "I yield," he growled through clenched teeth. Captain Kira stepped forward, officially declaring Silas the victor. The human district would have autonomy, and those who had participated in the uprising would receive amnesty. It was a significant victory, but only the beginning. As Silas left the combat circle, Thaisa met his gaze from the witness stand. Her expression held pride, relief, and something deeper that made his heart race faster than any combat ever had. Their victory aboard the Retribution sent shockwaves through the Empire. Emperor Vorak recalled his daughter to the Imperial Palace, demanding explanations for her involvement with the human rebel. Meanwhile, other subjugated species began their own peaceful resistance movements, inspired by the human example. Silas established a provisional council for the newly autonomous human district, with Jonas serving as primary liaison to other resistance cells throughout the Empire. But both knew this fragile peace was temporary. "Admiral Corvus has mobilized the 7th Fleet," Jonas reported during an emergency council meeting. 3 dreadnoughts and support vessels, enough firepower to level the human district as an example to others. "The Emperor would destroy his own city?" asked one council member. "Not the valuable parts," Silas replied grimly. "Just the expendable human section." "We need Thaisa," Jonas insisted, though she has influence over naval commanders, access to defense codes. Silas shook his head. "She's under Imperial scrutiny. Contacting her now would only endanger her further." As if summoned by their conversation, the communication system chimed with a heavily encrypted transmission. When decoded, Thaisa's holographic image appeared, her expression tense but determined. "Corvus has orders to reclaim Silas and execute resistance leaders," she confirmed. "But there's division within the Imperial forces. Some officers question the legitimacy of attacking citizens who've won rights through lawful combat." "Can you exploit these divisions?" Silas asked. "Already working on it," she replied. "Captain Kira has expressed reservations about Corvus's orders. Commander Vex of the Vigilance believes the Emperor is violating ancient Valoran codes. Not enough to stop 3 dreadnoughts," Jonas pointed out. "No," Tyessa agreed. But enough to create chaos in their command structure if properly leveraged. I'm transmitting tactical codes that will allow you to communicate directly with sympathetic officers. It's too risky for you, Silas objected. If they trace these transmissions, then I face the consequences of my choices, she replied firmly. As we all must. The transmission ended, leaving them with difficult decisions. The council voted to evacuate non-combatants while preparing defenses. Silas worked with Jonas to establish communication with the Valoran officers Tyessa had identified as potential allies. 3 days later, the 7th Fleet arrived in Kithar's orbit. Admiral Corvus issued an ultimatum: surrender Silas and all resistance leaders, or face orbital bombardment of the human district. The response came not from the humans, but from within Corvus's own fleet. Captain Kira of the Retribution broadcast on all channels. The human Silas won his freedom and the district's autonomy through lawful combat. Admiral Corvus's orders violate the sacred combat rights established by the First Emperor. I cannot in good conscience participate in this action. The Retribution broke formation, positioning itself between the human district and the rest of the fleet. Commander Vex's vigilance followed suit moments later. What had been a unified Imperial force fractured into 3 factions. Those loyal to Corvus, those supporting Kira's interpretation of Imperial law, and those maintaining neutrality while the dispute unfolded. In the confusion, Tyessa made her move. Using her royal access codes, she transmitted evidence of Corvus's planned atrocities to every ship in the fleet, along with a formal denunciation of her father's orders as contrary to Valoran principles. The space above Kithar erupted in conflict. Ships loyal to Corvus fired upon the defectors, while neutrals scrambled to avoid being caught in the crossfire. On the planet below, Silas organized defense teams in case orbital bombardment began despite the interference. Incoming transmission, Jonas announced. It's from the Imperial Palace. Emperor Vorak's stern visage filled their screens, his ancient eyes burning with controlled fury. This insurrection has gone far enough, he declared. My own daughter turned against her people. My fleet divided. Centuries of tradition questioned because one human slave refused to accept his proper place. Not refused, Your Imperial Majesty, Silas replied carefully. Chose a different path, as all sentient beings should have the right to do. Rights are earned, human, through strength and sacrifice. I agree, Silas said, surprising everyone. Which is why I propose one final trial, one last test of strength and sacrifice with the future of this conflict as the stake. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Explain. A final combat trial, under neutral witnesses at Nexus Prime. If I win, the Empire recognizes independence for all human worlds and ends the practice of sentient ownership. And if you lose, Vorak demanded, then I surrender myself to Imperial justice, and the resistance leaders follow my example. Jonas and the council members protested, but Silas raised a hand for silence. You propose to face my champion at Nexus Prime, Vorak clarified. No, Silas replied firmly. I propose to face you. Emperor Vorak, the architect of this system, should defend it personally. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. No one challenged the Emperor directly. It was unthinkable. To everyone's shock, Vorak smiled, a cold, predatory expression. You have courage, human. Very well, I accept your challenge. Nexus Prime, 3 standard days from now. When the transmission ended, the council erupted in protest. This is suicide, Jonas argued. Vorak is ancient but enhanced with Valoran life extension technology. He's personally won hundreds of combat trials. I know, Silas replied calmly. But it's our best option. Even if I lose, This buys time for evacuations and strengthens our position with the defecting fleet elements. There must be another way, a council member insisted. If there is, I'm open to suggestions, Silas said. But for now, we prepare as if this combat will proceed. That night, as Silas studied what little information existed about the Emperor's combat style, Thaisa arrived unexpectedly at the human district headquarters. She had escaped the imperial palace using secret passages known only to the royal family. "You can't face my father," she said without preamble. "He's not just physically formidable, he's ruthless in ways you can't imagine." Silas looked up from his preparations. "I don't intend to win through physical combat alone." "Then how?" He gestured for her to sit beside him. "Your father values tradition above all, correct?" "Yes," she confirmed. "The ancient Valoran codes are his religion. Then we use those codes against him." Silas explained. "Not to defeat him physically, but to defeat his ideology. To force him to confront the contradictions in his own belief system." Understanding dawned in Thaisa's eyes. "A battle of principles as much as bodies." "Exactly," Silas took her hand. "But I need to understand those principles completely. I need you to teach me everything about the oldest Valoran combat traditions." They worked through the night, Thaisa reciting ancient combat codes while Silas committed them to memory. By dawn, a strategy had formed, dangerous and dependent on perfect timing, but potentially effective. "It might work," Thaisa admitted, "but the risk." "Everything worthwhile carries risk," Silas replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Including this, us." She leaned into his touch. "Us. I like the sound of that word." "So do I," he murmured. "Which is why I intend to survive this combat." Nexus Prime was a neutral trading station at the convergence of several major hyperspace routes. Its Crystal Dome arena was renowned for hosting diplomatic resolutions through ritual combat, a tradition older than the Empire itself. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to witness the unprecedented duel between a human champion and the Emperor of the Valoran. Silas entered the dome wearing simple attire, carrying only a single shard of rock from the arena where his journey had begun. Emperor Vorak arrived in ceremonial combat armor, golden and imposing, carrying an ancient energy spear passed down through generations of Valoran rulers. "The terms are set," announced the Nexus Prime Arbiter, a Tellurian whose crystalline body reflected the light in prismatic patterns. "Combat continues until submission, incapacitation, or death. The victor's terms become binding interstellar law, recognized by all signatories of the Nexus Compact." Vorak lifted his spear in salute. "Before we begin, human, I offer you one final opportunity to reconsider. Kneel now, renounce your rebellion, and I will grant mercy to your followers." Silas raised his arena stone in matching salute. "And I offer you one final opportunity to recognize that all sentient beings deserve freedom and dignity. Transform your empire from within, and be remembered as the greatest emperor in Valoran history." The ancient ruler's expression hardened. "Combat begins," he declared, and attacked with surprising speed for his age. Silas had expected the Emperor's enhanced abilities, but the reality was still shocking. Vorak moved like a warrior centuries younger, his energy spear cutting precise arcs through the air. Silas dodged and evaded, studying his opponent's patterns while conserving energy. "You cannot win through evasion alone," Vorak taunted as his spear nicked Silas's arm, drawing first blood. "I don't intend to," Silas replied, circling warily. He raised his voice to ensure all witnesses could hear. "Tell me, Emperor, what is the first principle of Valoran combat tradition?" The question momentarily broke Vorak's rhythm. "Victory through superior skill and honor," he answered automatically. And the second? Silas pressed, narrowly avoiding another thrust. Strength is proven through the quality of one's opponents, not the ease of victory. Silas nodded, implementing his strategy. By these principles, you establish the arena trials, 100 victories to prove supreme worth? Correct, Vorak acknowledged, advancing again. Then by your own sacred traditions, Silas continued. My victory over 100 champions already established my worth. The trial itself acknowledged my right to choose my reward. The Emperor's attacks became more aggressive. You refused the proper reward. I chose a different reward, Silas corrected, as was my right under combat law. With each exchange, Silas quoted another ancient Valoran principle, forcing Vorak to acknowledge traditions that contradicted his current actions. The Emperor's frustration grew visible, his attacks becoming less precise, more fueled by emotion. You twist our sacred codes, Vorak snarled. I honor their original intent, Silas countered. Your ancestors believed in proving worth through fair combat, not in perpetual enslavement of the worthy. The battle continued, physically grueling but increasingly philosophical. Vorak landed several painful blows, but Silas maintained his strategy. For each wound he received, he exposed another contradiction in the Emperor's application of Valoran tradition. The witnesses murmured as the pattern became clear. The human was fighting not just with his body, but with the Emperor's own belief system. Even some Valoran nobles in attendance began to nod thoughtfully at Silas's arguments, bleeding from multiple wounds. Silas finally implemented the final phase of his plan. He allowed Vorak to back him against the crystal dome wall, seemingly trapped. Your clever words end here, human, Vorak declared, raising his spear for a finishing thrust. Silas raised his arena stone. You value symbols, Emperor. This stone comes from the arena where I won my freedom, where I refused to claim another sentient being as property. Meaningless, Vorak dismissed. Not to those who seek freedom, Silas replied. According to the 14th combat principle, a warrior's weapon carries the spirit of their cause. As the Emperor lunged, Silas threw the stone, not at Vorak, but at the exact junction where the crystal dome met its support structure. The stone struck with precision, creating a resonance pattern that spread across the dome's surface, filling the arena with a pure, haunting tone. The ancient crystal, responding to the exact frequency of the arena stone, amplified the sound until it penetrated every corner of the space. The tone spoke to something primal in Valoran physiology, a frequency that their ancestors had used in their earliest ritual combats to signify transcendence of conflict. Vorak froze, the spear tip centimeters from Silas's chest. The Emperor's eyes widened in recognition of the sacred harmony. Impossible, he whispered. How could you know the harmony of cessation? Tiessa taught me, Silas admitted. She believed her father still honored the deepest traditions, the ones that predated conquest and emphasized harmony between worthy adversaries. The Emperor lowered his spear slightly, confusion evident in his ancient eyes. My daughter taught you this? She believes in a better future for the Valoran, one that honors your greatest traditions while discarding those that bring only suffering. The crystal resonance continued, filling the dome with its otherworldly sound. According to oldest Valoran tradition, when this tone appeared during combat, warriors were bound to seek resolution through wisdom rather than further bloodshed. The choice is yours, Emperor, Silas said quietly. Continue this combat in violation of your most sacred traditions, or honor the harmony of cessation and seek a new path forward. For long moments, Vorak remained frozen, internal conflict evident in his expression. Then, slowly, he lowered his spear completely. The harmony speaks, he acknowledged formally. Combat ends in Transcendence. Murmurs spread through the witnesses. Transcendence was the rarest of combat outcomes, neither victory nor defeat, but transformation of the conflict itself. Or what terms would you propose in this transcendence? Vorak asked stiffly. Silas straightened, wincing from his wounds but standing tall. Recognition of autonomy for all human worlds, an end to sentient ownership throughout the Empire, and a new council formed of all species to guide the Empire's evolution. The Emperor's jaw tightened. You ask for the dissolution of the Empire itself. I ask for its transformation, Silas corrected. From an empire of conquest to a federation of equals. Your ancestors would recognize this as evolution, not destruction. After what seemed an eternity, Vorak nodded once. The terms of transcendence are accepted. Let it be recorded by all witnesses. The Nexus Prime Arbiter confirmed the agreement, making it binding interstellar law. What had begun as a battle to the death ended with the foundations of a new galactic order. In the aftermath, chaos and change swept across Valoran territories. Some Imperial hardliners resisted, while others embraced the opportunity for evolution. Thyessa worked tirelessly with her father to implement the new system, while Silas helped establish human representation in the newly formed Council of Species. 5 years passed. The transition was not without conflict, but gradually, a new balance emerged. The former empire became the Valoran Federation, with member worlds retaining autonomy while sharing common defense and trade agreements. On New Harmony Station, constructed at the former Imperial border as a symbol of cooperation. Silas stood at a viewport overlooking the docking bays. Ships of all designs arrived daily, Valoran cruisers alongside human freighters, Altarian research vessels beside Brexan mining ships. Admiring your handiwork, Thyessa asked. Joining him at the viewport, no longer a princess but the Federation's first elected coordinator. She carried their infant daughter in her arms, their son, a toddler with his father's determined expression and his mother's violet eyes, clutched Silas's hand. Our handiwork, Silas corrected, putting his arm around her shoulders. Sometimes I still can't believe how far we've come. From arena slave to Federation founder, she mused. It's quite a journey. From imperial princess to revolutionary leader, he countered with a smile. Equally impressive. Their son tugged at Silas's hand. Father, can we visit the garden level? The Altarian crystal flowers are blooming. Of course, Silas agreed, lifting the boy onto his shoulders. Together, the family made their way to the station's central garden, a vast biodome where species from across the Federation cultivated their native plants side by side, as their children marveled at the multicolored crystal formations growing alongside earth roses and Valoran fire lilies. Silas and Thyessa shared a quiet moment of reflection. Do you ever regret it? She asked. The arena, the combat with my father, all the blood and pain it took to reach this point? Silas considered the question seriously. I regret the necessity of the path, but not the destination. He looked at their children, then back to his wife. Freedom has meaning beyond victory. It's in what we build with that freedom that gives it value. And what we've built is just beginning. Thyessa added, watching representatives of a dozen species working together to tend the garden, a living symbol of their new federation. A just beginning. Silas agreed, holding her close as they faced the future they had fought to create, not as master and slave, not as owner and prize, but as equals who had chosen each other and the world they would build together.